Present.
Chair Cervantes.
Present.
Ms. Kurgan for Secretary Moss.
Here.
Mr. Hardiman.
Here.
Ms. Lamone. Mr. Henning for Treasurer Ma.
Here.
Mr. Moto.
Here.
Mr. Prince.
Here, but nervous that we're locked in and need a code to get out?
Yes, there is. You'll find out soon.
Mr. Russell. Mr. Fiegels for Secretary Sin.
Here.
Mr. Velasquez.
Here.
Dr. White.
Here.
Mr. Williams.
Here.
Mr. Fano for Mr. Acefa.
Here.
Ms. Peralt for Mr. Stevenshaw.
Here.
And Mr. Surdich.
Here.
Chair, we have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. The minutes of the December 11 meeting are in the package. Both had a chance to review them. Unless there are any comments or corrections to the minutes, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
Move the minutes.
Thank you, Director Henning. Is there a
Second.
Thank you, Director Williams. Motion's made in second. Per our protocol, with that, the minutes are deemed approved. And with that, I'll start off with just a few comments. First of all, I would very much like to welcome our new board member, Barton Moto, to us. He is the CEO and founder of both Model Z and Sola Impact. He's one of the largest developers of state-based housing, affordable housing in Southern California. I think, Martin, you're going to be a terrific asset to the board. Welcome. And I'll give you a chance to say a few words of introduction to the board.
Thank you. You even got the pronunciation of my name right, but we're a large private developer of affordable and workforce housing in Los Angeles and Southern California, with a focus on impact housing, meaning providing housing to those that are more vulnerable. So we're just glad to be part of this. Thank you for having us.
Great, terrific. We're glad you're on board. Thank you. And I'd also like to extend a welcome to Michelle Peralt, who is Chief Deputy Director of Policy for the Department of Finance. She's stepping in today for Director Stevenshaw. Welcome.
Thank you.
Appreciate your presence with us. Thank you.
Happy to have been able to make a meeting.
Thank you. Tony, would you have comments, please?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, welcome to the first meeting of 2026. My second meeting as Executive Director, but happy to be here and make it into my second calendar year. Now that I've been here for a few months, I definitely have a better idea of where CalHFA is at and where I want to go in 2026 with the great team that we have at CalHFA. So I'll get into that a little bit, but the other big thing that's happening in 2026 is the creation of the California Housing and Homelessness Agency that CalHFA will be a part of, and really looking forward to supporting the creation of the new agency and working more closely with our state housing partners as we build out our programs and as they build out their programs. And I see Director Velasquez here and Deputy Secretary Kurgan, and we'll be working very closely with both of them as we move forward. One big piece of news that has come up already this year, which Erwin will get into in a later presentation, is that we upgraded, our bond rating got upgraded earlier this year, which is a sign of our financial strength. Again, I also want to make sure that we always remember that the bond rating is a tool towards our ultimate end, but this gives us more leverage to be able to get out there and be the lender that I know CalHFA can be on both the multifamily and single family side. Next month, we will have our strategic planning session, 2-day session for the board, where we will be able to really discuss in depth a lot of the strategies for fiscal year 26-27. Really looking forward to hearing the board's thoughts, being able to have that discussion and lay out some of the direction that I would like to take the agency, like I said, in conjunction with our state partners, and really drive CalHFA to be the best CalHFA we can be. Few other updates. The Dream for All application portal was announced that it will open on February 24th. So the new round of Dream for All will be out there, and looking forward to seeing how much interest we get. We fully expect it to be oversubscribed, as it was the last few times. Not too many changes made this year. We did work on a few things around the margins to make sure that the target populations that we want to make sure are being served are best served by the program. The 2026 mixed income program term sheet was also released yesterday. So looking forward to getting that out there and working with our development partners on that. That one will be open, applications will be open through March 2nd for that. So those are our two big programs. The CalAssist program is still up and running. Kelly will be having a presentation later on that, on some changes that we're looking to make sure that we can get the most out of that program as well. Two other big things, state budget. The governor released the state budget a week and a half ago, almost 2 weeks ago now. There was nothing in there that directly impacted CalHFA, but there is news around the creation of the new housing homelessness agency that we'll be working with our state partners on. Finally, there was SIDLAC and TCAC meetings which allocated bonds and tax credits this year. CalHFA, with its mixed income program, there's a $310 million of bonds that were allocated for the mixed income pool, and $100 million of state tax credits were allocated to that as well. So that will be tied with the mixed income subsidy that we put out the release for yesterday. I did attend a grand opening in Santa Clara. I was unable to visit board member Prince.
I took it personally.
But it's a great new project in part of a larger master plan community that overlooked Levi Stadium down there. It was great and really exciting to see some of the new technologies being integrated into some of these projects. So that was exciting. They really minimized the parking space by creating lifts and things like that to really make sure they got the most housing possible out of the land that they had. All right. Catherine McFadden is officially on board as our Director of Multifamily. Really excited. I know many of you met her at our last board meeting, but very excited to, she started last week, so we've been meeting plenty, and she's got plenty of great ideas as well that will be brought to our February strategic planning discussion. Two more places that we will be going next week. We will be going to San Diego to have a listening session on the multifamily programs with multifamily developers, and we will be attending the Tribal Chiefs meeting outside of Bakersfield next week to have a listening session and make sure that we're meeting our tribal partners in a productive way. So that's, I think, all I have. That may be 2/3 of the meeting, but with that, I'll hand it back to you, Mr. Simon.
Thank you very much. Clearly a lot going on. It's always great to do these openings and dedications to see the fruits of the labor of many, many people, not just in this room. With that, I'd like to move to agenda item 4, which is a discussion regarding recommendation possible action relating to the CalAssist Mortgage Relief Program. Kelly Madsen, our Director of Enterprise Risk Management, and Rebecca Franklin, Chief Deputy Director, will be speaking on this topic.
Good morning, members of the board. Today we'll be discussing the CalAssist Mortgage Fund. We'll start by reviewing program statistics to date since the program's been up and running, our media and engagement strategies and outreach activities and some of the results from that. And then we'll be getting into recommendations that we have to expand the program in order to make more meaningful and lasting impact in folks' recovery journey. So with that, we'll start with our program updates. Again, CalHFA is administering $105 million from the National Mortgage Settlement Fund to provide mortgage assistance to homeowners who've been affected by qualified disasters in California from January of 2023 through January of 2025. So that does include the LA fires. The CalAssist Mortgage Fund opened for applications in June of 2025 and subsequently announced an expansion on October 20th of 2025, increasing the program's income limits. So as of this week, as of January 20th, 759 homeowners have received over $6 million in grants towards their mortgage. The average award amount is almost $8,200, with 80% of the grants going to homeowners who were affected by the Eaton fire, 16% by the Palisades fire, and 4% for other California disasters. Next, please. In terms of our media engagement strategy, it crosses several channels to reach people where they are, whether they're watching TV or scrolling social media or searching online. We use three main types of media: earned, social, and paid. Earned media is coverage that we don't pay for, like news articles or TV or radio segments, and it really reflects how often others are talking about us and the program. To date, we've secured 695 placements, reaching outlets with an average audience of 5 million people and a combined potential reach of 1.35 billion. There is actually a typo there. The 1.35 million on total unique visitors per month on the side is actually billion. So quite an extensive reach. For social media, this is where we share content directly with followers using existing CalHFA channels such as Instagram and Facebook. We've posted over 150 times, gained over 600 new followers, and expanded our audience reach by over 277,000 people. Paid media is advertising that we purchase in order to target specific audiences. Our paid campaign focuses solely on Los Angeles County. This channel generated over 8 million impressions, meaning that our ads appeared on someone's screen 8 million times. Now, this doesn't guarantee that they clicked it, just that they saw it. So it's really more for brand and program awareness. In terms of whether they clicked it or how they interacted with it, that's measured by our click-through rate. And for our search ads, which appear in places like Google search when you're looking up items on your phone, our click-through rate is 69%, meaning that almost three quarters of the people who saw that search ad ended up clicking it and being directed to our website. And this is really an exceptional result. Finally, our conversion rate is tracking when someone sees our ad, clicks on it, and then subsequently clicks the Apply Now button on our website. This rate is almost 25%, meaning that 1 in 4 people who reached our site via a search ad ended up clicking the Apply Now button. Compared to the industry benchmark of 3%, that's over 8 times higher. So really what you're seeing here is strong intent and interest from our audience. So in short, our multi-channel approach is working. Our earned media is helping us build credibility. The social media is helping us build engagement. And finally, our paid media is helping to drive action with this program. Turning our attention now to our outreach strategy, we've again implemented a multi-channel strategy here that leverages influential stakeholders and trusted community networks. We're focused on building trust and awareness through direct contact with key stakeholders, adoption, elected officials, mortgage servicers, and community-based organizations to drive program adoption and trust and ensure that stakeholders are equipped to serve as informed advocates. We've secured engagement with over 80 elected officials who are either representing areas impacted by recent disasters or they're overseeing housing and emergency response. And this is helping us to ensure policy alignment and local advocacy for the program. We've also partnered with mortgage servicers like Lakeview to extend our reach directly to homeowners and provide program overview presentations and program materials. Finally, we've also built strong partnerships with the Office of Community Partnerships and Strategic Communications. That's in large thanks due to Director CalHFA and his ability to connect us with that office. And in addition to that, we've been working closely with CalOES, again, delivering program presentations and distributing materials directly to case managers, community-based organization staff, and other government agencies. These efforts represent contacting over 60 local agencies and community-based organizations like Neighborhood Housing Services of LA, also like the Los Angeles Community Recovery Work Group. And we're embedding program information into these existing disaster recovery systems for maximum reach. Via this interaction, we're also able to integrate stakeholder insights and get feedback from folks who are directly on the ground to try to strengthen our delivery of this program. And this approach really ensures that trusted messengers like elected officials and local nonprofits help amplify program awareness and drive program adoption. And so, these numbers do tell us part of the story, but the real impact here is represented by the voices of the people that we serve. Imagine losing your home in a fire and wondering how you'll keep up with your mortgage. One homeowner told us, knowing my mortgage was covered for 3 months lifted a huge weight off my shoulders. Another shared, the CalHFA Mortgage Fund was a true gift, giving me hope and stability after a fire destroyed my home. For many, this support is more than financial, it's emotional. One recipient said, "It's truly life-changing and gave me a gigantic breath of relief." These funds allowed families to focus on rebuilding and returning to their communities. As one homeowner put it, in a time of disaster, this assistance is essential. The process has been praised as easy and accessible, and people are encouraging others to apply because it's been incredibly helpful. And these testimonials really remind us that our work isn't just about the dollars. It's really about restoring hope and stability when people need it most. And now we also have an opportunity to hear directly from one of our grant recipients in her own words. Potentially.
Later today, my son called me and I didn't expect that. The worst part because when I leave my house, when they evacuate us, we thought we were gonna return later today. My son called me. And you know what, Mama? The house is gone. The whole block, it was burned down, everything. In this part is gonna be the living room, dining room, and the kitchen with an island here. To apply for the CalHFA Mortgage Fund, for me, it was not so hard, maybe like in half an hour when you have everything ready, it's so easy. Well, when I find out we approved for the help, well, I was excited. They pay us for 3 months of the mortgage. Don't hesitate. Apply. You're gonna rebuild, you're gonna come back.
Great. With that, I'll turn to discussing the details on our request to expand this program. When the program first launched, our initial priority was speed and getting assistance to homeowners quickly during an unprecedented crisis. That approach was critical in the immediate aftermath of the LA wildfires. 1 year since these devastating fires and 7 months into running CalAssist, we now have robust data and insights to guide the next phase. This phased approach of rapid relief followed by data-driven refinements was successfully used in our administration of the California Mortgage Relief Program during the pandemic. With the goal of making an even more meaningful and lasting impact on the lives of homeowners that have been devastated by recent disasters, CalHFA is seeking approval to make strategic adjustments to the CalAssist Mortgage Fund, including increasing the length of assistance and maximum award amount per household, and expanding the pool of eligible homeowners by increasing the program limits to include more moderate and middle-income households. These changes will reach more families impacted by the disaster, delivering deeper financial relief and provide longer-term stability. As we look ahead, our goal is to optimize funding to amplify the recovery and ensure that every dollar delivers the greatest possible impact for homeowners. Updated FEMA data and alongside eligibility adjustments gives us a clear picture of the potential program scale. We estimate at this point that there are somewhere between 3,600 on up to almost 8,000 potential eligible households. We've modeled scenarios for extending assistance from 3 months to 6, 9, and 12, keeping in mind that not every potential eligible household in our target population will actually apply. Our analysis shows that extending assistance to 12 months of mortgage coverage is the most effective way to optimize funding, to amplify recovery and deliver meaningful impact. This change moves us beyond short-term relief towards long-term recovery and resilience, giving families the stabilities that they need to rebuild. By approving this adjustment, we can ensure that every dollar goes further in helping Californians rebuild stronger and recover fully. And CalAssist's program began with a really clear mission to prioritize the most vulnerable households. We set income limits at 100% AMI to deliver rapid, equitable relief in the immediate aftermath, and that was the right decision. Today, the data is telling us something critical. Income limits remain the top barrier preventing disaster-impacted homeowners from accessing relief. At 100% AMI, nearly 1 in 5 applicants were declined. And when you also include non-response cases, meaning they didn't follow up with us when we requested more information, which typically are income related, that actually jumps to about 3 to 4 families, 3 out of every 4 families being turned away. Even after raising income limits to 150% AMI last October, declines remain high at about 1 in 3 applicants, or just over half, again, when non-responses for additional information are included. The median income for these declines is around $254,000, which aligns around approximately 180% of AMI for Los Angeles County, which is where most of our applicants live. Los Angeles County's income limits reflect a wide variation across the region, making them less representative of homeowners in fire-affected areas like Eaton and Palisades. In order to ensure that relief reaches disaster-impacted homeowners, we recommend increasing the income limit to allow more moderate and middle-income households into the program. This adjustment reflects the realities of households in LA fire-affected areas. Other program requirements, like conforming loan limits, remain in place to prioritize vulnerable households and maintain equity. By approving this change, we can leverage program flexibility for smarter and fairer recovery, making every dollar count and again ensuring that more families receive the support that they need to rebuild stronger. Should the board adopt these expansion recommendations discussed today, we have a clear strategy to ensure homeowners know about these changes and can access the support that they need. First, we'll announce the program changes publicly through a press event to generate broad awareness. We'll follow that with direct mailers to mortgage holders in impacted zip codes, ensuring targeted communication to those most likely to benefit. And we'll continue building on our outreach efforts to keep that momentum going strong. Second, we'll focus on direct engagement with applicants and homeowners. We'll notify previous applicants of the changes so they know expanded assistance is available. For those that are already funded, no reapplication would be required, removing any barriers and speeding up the delivery. We'll invite homeowners who may now be eligible under the new criteria to reapply, expanding access to relief. This approach ensures that program changes translate into real impact. By combining broad awareness with targeted engagement, we'll reach the right people quickly and effectively. And with that, I welcome any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much. Questions from the board? Comments? Director Williams.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the video that was included. That old phrase, we're the government and we're here to help, often does not end up in a very positive way for those who are seeking help. But what is clear is that this program has really been designed to be helpful and not bureaucratic, which is often the case when people are going through traumatic situations, they lost. As she said, she thought she was coming back home, and she came back home to a burned down lot. Just the trauma of that alone, and then having some complicated, burdensome application process only compounds an already traumatic situation. So I want to just congratulate you on those efforts, and for those who've already been able to participate. But as we expand the income eligibility, I'm always concerned that in this case, the people at the lower income but still qualify often are the ones who are not as aware as people with higher incomes. And so as we expand this, I just always want to make sure that those at the lower end of the eligibility spectrum don't continue to hear about this opportunity as we broaden the range. You know, people with higher incomes generally tend to be connected to resources and to information networks that they're able to move forward on. And sometimes the ones at the lower end don't have that same kind of network. The other thing is that you mentioned that of the ones who initially applied, when they were asked to provide additional financial information, that's where the numbers saw a decrease. What do you think is contributing to that? Do you think it's just the income eligibility, or there may be something deeper than that? I know that we have a number of people who've been able to purchase homes, and their citizenship status is one in which allowed them, even though they weren't U.S. citizens, to acquire a mortgage. Do we find that maybe that could have some role to play, that because of their citizenship status, that they may be a little hesitant in provide, given the current climate that we're in, you know, federal, public agencies asking for more details may lead to other things that cause them concern. I don't know if that's the case. It may not even be an issue. I only raise it because of the environment in which we currently find ourselves in.
Yeah, so a couple responses to the first kind of statement around the lower income. We actually will be giving anyone who, if the board does adopt this resolution and expand, will actually be re-talking to them, but in a very positive way of, now you have 12 months of assistance rather than the 3. And so as they're exiting forbearance and stuff, kind of in this timeliness component, that's why we're bringing the item in this month. So I think we will be talking to them, but we wouldn't be continuing to talk to them. And the income limit raise, we're not raising to, there are other criteria that creates a little bit more of a, still keeps our applicant pool down. Like the house has to be under the conforming loan limit, the most current conforming loan limit. I know last year's was like 1.14 million in LA County. So, so there is other criteria than just the income. If we raise the income, we're not, the floodgates hasn't opened at that end. To the comment about, we are case specific when we are corresponding for feedback. So the questions are very specific. If you uploaded 2 months of, one of the criteria is having 2 months of your bank statement uploaded. If we have a question, we would be very specific in our questioning. We're not broad questioning. With any of our relief programs, we ask for identification to identify the homeowner is the person on the mortgage, and that's where the identification stops. So as far as other, and I don't think the identification would be, if I'm asking about their identification, it's about what they've uploaded. I don't think that there is any sort of interference in other things because the program's pretty agnostic. Our term sheet's very clear. You need to identify yourself that you are the person that is holding the mortgage, and that's where it stops.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Kurgan?
Thanks. I think I might build on that question, but in a different way. So just to acknowledge that in this time, and really there's many times when government may not be the most trusted messenger. So you can tell us a little bit more about how with this proposed expansion, thank you, will there be a way to kind of further connect or deepen the relationship with community-based organizations that you've already built? I know you mentioned the relationship with neighborhood housing services, who's really a trusted voice and provider. How else are you getting the word out? And I think this builds on Director Williams's questions. Maybe you could tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, I think, anytime we have program changes, we're certainly going to go back and revisit partners we've already engaged and make sure that they're up to date and amplifying that message for us. We're continuing to work with the Office of Community Partnerships and Strategic Communications. One of the convenings that we attended had over 500 attendees, all representing community-based organizations, and we're going to continue to follow up, particularly through that channel, to try to amplify the message around these changes, should you approve them, and continue to reach people where they're at with representatives that they know and trust, given that sometimes the government, and we're here to help, isn't always
Yep, that's
well
great.
received.
I think the government and a lot of information, real quick,
Yeah.
and a lot of information online, there's a lot of noise out there. So I want to emphasize that this has been part of your strategy and appreciate that you'll continue that effort. And
Right.
I think that helps get the word out to people who are already known in community.
Yeah, I mean, we have partnered with other agencies as well as this administration. So the governor's office itself has been doing a lot of amplification of the rebuild efforts in the total package that this administration has been supporting. I know also the treasurer's office and whatnot has been a really big vocal voice, and those are trusted partners in these communities. So we do recognize that. We're very integrated with those. I also wanted to say that this, having run a couple now relief programs, unfortunately, the servicers are an essential part. We're very closely working with our partners at DFPI, and the servicer, when the homeowner's facing these kinds of mortgage related issues and whatnot, it's unfortunately, and it is sad that as a governmental entity, our voice doesn't carry in that trusted space, but we have found a lot of success with the servicer reaching out, the servicer doing a mailing, the servicer offering our services or our programs when they're engaging with it, with that servicer. So the community-based organizations are great, they're great support, but really frankly, that servicer community is an essential part of this process.
Thank you so much for raising that. Thanks for the answers.
Thank you. Other questions? Director Camilo.
Well, thank you. And my question builds on the previous two questions is, and I think I may have mentioned this at the December meeting, which is the Altadena area was a really multiracial community with a history of long-established Black families and Black wealth. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of us are concerned about, is that this community that had been a place that was safe and welcoming with multi-generations, that we're going to be losing that. And I'm curious if there are ways that we're able to target so that we are reaching folks, especially in the Black community, that this resource is available.
I will say in that specific community, what is neighborhood services?
Oh, sorry, the LA neighborhood works.
LA Neighborhood Works, Lori Gay's, we've partnered with them. They did host in-person sessions at community centers to help the homeowners of that area. We also are we took a lot of time to understand the laws and legalities around successor and interest, meaning that community, the mortgage holder may not be with us at this time and their successors are living in the home. So this program is able to help those people in that state. It's actually, I didn't think about it, but unfortunately, my father has passed and he owns a home. Well, he's got a great interest rate. I'm not refining that thing. So I own a home under my dad's mortgage. It's actually a common thing, and it was very common in actually Altadena, Pasadena area, in the Eaton fire area. And so we have made program guidelines to make sure that we're addressing the uniqueness of maybe say that community. That's a very common thing to happen there that's maybe not as common in Palisades or in where the San Diego floods are, but we have been very much looking at that. We've also made a couple of tweaks around if your residence also was connected to a commercial property. At first, when we were doing with the COVID programs, we were focusing really on the homes, like single-family homes. We've made some adjustments there, recognizing that, especially in those communities, you may be having a storefront or something, and that space is connected, and so we didn't want to, shut out any homeowners in that area. All of our, as Ms. Madsen there, all of our paid media is in those areas. We work with ethnic media. We are very reaching out to them. We are going to be doing this direct mailer to all the addresses that were affected in those areas. So we are also, I guess I would say that learning from the mortgage relief program, all of our materials are translated. They're translated by native speakers, understanding how we're communicating things. The word grant in Spanish, we want to make sure it's not disengaging for the community. We found that out the hard way sometimes. So really understanding who we're serving and that community's needs are essential, and that's also why we're talking about an income limit raise as well. Understanding LA County and its uniqueness, a median income for LA County, I think everyone knows when we're talking about AMI, that's a very big, diverse range, right? And when you do a median, that's hard. So that's why we were bringing this in as a response to understanding those communities specifically.
Oh, thank you. And I just want to say, I was in a neighbor-based organization during the Great Recession, so I know the fact that you were able to design something that could move so quickly, that was so user-friendly, just amazing, and congratulations for that. And thank you for your answer. And I think just if there's anything that we could do with our partners on the ground to specifically, there are Black churches in that community or adjacent in Pasadena. If there are just ways that we can really work to preserve that wealth in that community, I think it would be a great win for us.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. So wonderful.
We want this to be seen as not just a monetary support, but as an invitation to come back, rebuild, that we're here, that we want you to be here.
Thank you. I've got Director Henning and then Director Montel.
I had a few questions. One was, you talked about your media outreach plan. What was the total cost of your outreach plan?
I don't have the exact figure on hand, but I can get back to you on that.
That'd be fine, or even a ballpark is fine.
I want to say, it's in the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've spent on media buys and whatnot.
But television ads for under $1 million, that's incredible.
Yes, it's under $1 million. Yeah, Kathy's gonna throw something at me if I lie, but it's under $1 million. But we've spent, I would say, around $400,000 to $500,000 in media buys.
That's an incredible rate for Los Angeles paid media time. I was just curious because that's a side business that we always end up getting into.
Yeah.
I'm also curious, particularly when we're talking about a disaster area, sending direct mail to addresses seems like it would be difficult.
I think yeah,
We've had this conversation.
right.
Yeah.
In post-disaster, I think when we're trying to reach the people that lived in that community, it's always going to be a challenge. Some of them have stayed, some of the homes are still there, some of them have burned down and they're gone. We've tried to focus again with our paid media around the LA County and reaching people on places like Facebook and Google. This direct mailer is sort of an additional step we'd like to take, even if it's reaching a homeowner who is not income eligible, and their home is fine. They have neighbors, they have friends, they know people within the community, and I think, part of our goal there is to also help turn those folks into trusted advisors for us to communicate, with their friends, their former neighbors about this program in case they haven't heard.
We're also rolling the dice that they have mail forwarding. That's being very transparent. So if we send it to their current address, we're making an assumption that they have some sort of ongoing mail forwarding through the postal service, that it should reach them at their current address. We're also looking at doing a text campaign to be able to blast the phone numbers that we can get. When we talk about trusted, it's extra spammy, but we're trying. So, we are. It sounds a little odd to mail a home that we know is destroyed, but we're assuming there's mail forwarding happening.
And then lastly, I think that I share the same concerns that Director Williams brought up, and I heard some of the other directors also say, talking about raising the income levels. I mean, we're less than a year after these disasters happened. These are harder populations to do outreach to make sure that we get outreach to. I'm just concerned that we're a little premature in reaching that higher limits, and I'd rather spend time trying to help out people that are, with our precious state dollars, that are at those lower income limits at this point. But I'm interested to hear what other commissioners have to say.
Okay. Thank you. Director Moto?
Thank you for the presentation. I don't say it often, but as some may know, I lost my home and everything I own in the fires. I lived in the Palisades, and so it's one of the few areas that I know intimately now that how people respond in a crisis, and I think that I just want to first applaud your efforts and the efforts of the board in really providing this. It's critical. People are overwhelmed. I moved 6 times in 5 months. And it's really, a tragedy, and I think a lot of people are continue to suffer from it. Being in the Palisades, it's obviously a much better resourced community in terms of income, but even folks that are at the highest level become overwhelmed, they become paralyzed. You lose your tax returns, you can find some of them digitally, all of your IDs. So again, I want to start by just thanking you for the efforts that you have done and the thoughtfulness that have gone into it. I would reiterate that I think there are dozens of very good nonprofits and local partners. We have worked extensively with faith-based organizations and kind of the follow-up that's necessary when people are in that traumatic state and are not responding to your outreach for whatever reason. They don't have the records, they're intimidated, they're scrambling, they're dealing with insurance, which has been a nightmare for most people, myself included. But so to the degree that I'm allowed to or whatnot, we have, a lot of local partners, a lot of faith-based organizations that we have vetted, literally over 1,000 names of people that have asked for assistance that own homes and that are predominantly in the Altadena, Pasadena area. So again, thank you, and if I can help, be very happy to.
I'd be very happy to follow up with you on that. Thank you so much, Director.
I just want to clarify, and I'm sorry if I left. I'm not against raising the income limit. I do want us to do the deep targeting to people that are under-resourced, but I also know, that a lot of times it's multiple people in the household pulling together their own, to pay the rent. So that could be 4 people, to pay a mortgage. So I'm not against the raising, just to clarify. But I do want us to continue to target the low-income families.
I think Director Velasquez, you.
Yeah, on the topic of deep targeting, I think this is kind of like a common theme on the social media and media buys and partnering with community organizations. I'm fairly aware of the massive endeavor that federal, state, and local authorities stood up soon after the fires. And by the way, I know we're concentrating a lot on the LA fires. I heard the range of time, so I just want to be mindful also that targeting also should focus on survivors and people who experience loss outside of the LA fires. But just coming back to the LA fires, that effort was massive, and the state Office of Emergency Services, Health and Human Services Agency, BCSH, it was a massive effort to gather as much data as possible on survivors of people affected by the fire. How much assistance have you received going to that collaborative, that intergovernmental collaborative? I know we've struggled with characteristics of the data, like income and demographics, but not on the actual people who lost property or were affected by the fires directly. have you, this to me sounds like this is the best deep targeting we can do. Have you received assistance from that collaborative in order to obtain as much data and go straight to the people who lost property?
Yes, all the data that we have been presenting has come through that collaborative. Other than getting the addresses and the phone numbers of the affected properties, we're actually purchasing that data from a different data set. But all of the initial findings, the program was designed through the initial data that we've gotten in collaboration with the team at HCD, OES, ourselves, agents, BCSH, and the GO. There was a refinement of that data, and that's where we have based our projections when you see in that table around the analysis of where we're going from the 6, 9, or 12 months. That was from another data set from there. The data is hard. Income level, like being able to project all the criteria and then cross-reference that with the data, there's big holes in the data, right? Like the data set stops at 175,000 for the household income. So we don't know what that is, right? We don't know what the stair steps are when we're creating these kind of cross-reference points. These are our best guesses. So we have to look at those data sets and what we're seeing from the applicants. We also survey all the applicants. We are in close communication with the community-based organizations that we are partnered with. That's where the income conversation is actually coming up, is that we are getting from boots on the ground qualitative data and feedback that people are deterred from applying to the program because of the data income or the income limit threshold that we've set. Yes. Is the data perfect? No. Are we doing everything we can, including purchasing data? Yes. But it is through that collaborative that we've been, from the moment of inception of this program, it's gone through that kind of collaborative effort between HCD, agency, the governor's office, and ourselves.
Yep. Other questions? I see. Thank you.
And a couple of questions, and again, apologies if these maybe have been spoken about at previous meetings. And I think you might have said that. So the current limits were adjusted in October, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I guess I echo a little bit again of what some of my other colleagues have mentioned about timing, right? We just increased those limits 2 months ago. So kind of do we need to see how that plays out a little bit? It would be my first question. And then maybe you said this, and you probably did, and I missed it. What are we anticipating? And I'm just going to use LA since that's the one we keep talking about. So that limit right now is just over 211,000. What are we thinking that adjustment's going to look like?
Right now, I think we were looking at the data around what the median income is for all of our declines. You mentioned that earlier, and that it was falling somewhere around the 180 AMI range. I think we're open to considering somewhere around that range, or even as high as 200%, but we would be interested in board feedback around that.
So I think that's around 254 for LA County. Okay. So that would be kind of the highest end that we would. Sorry,
that's helpful. That's
helpful.
So
we're not looking to go beyond probably that 250, right? We're not going to 350 or something like that. And just as a point of education, there are other criteria, like I said before, like the home must be under the conforming loan limit. I don't know what 26 is. I know, I just remember what 25 is. So the home can't be at the time of origination, financed a $4.5 million home. No. So there is other criteria to try to keep that focus towards that. So so on that, that's where we're going into that 250 range.
Okay. And then can I just ask a fundamental question about the overall funding itself, right? It's coming from the National Mortgage Fund. I get that piece of it. And it's only for 23 to 25. What is the encumbrance and expenditure period requirement for the grant program?
There is, so the National Mortgage Settlement Fund was allocated to us in like
2020.
okay.
In 2020, okay.
Claire's my guru there. So we don't have it's not like when we had the ARPA funds or something like that where we have to
Okay.
expend it by X. So it is,
It's there until it's gone.
it's there until it's gone. But it does have very strict allowable uses. So I
Yes,
would say
understood.
that, yeah.
Okay, I just wanted an understanding, again, kind of back to the initial conversation about timing and making adjustments, and, you know, if we were coming up against an expenditure cutoff,
No.
and we wanted to be able to obviously maximize utilization of grants, or if perhaps you were feeling any sense of that money being swept, because we've obviously had a lot of movement from the federal level of things or anything like that, then that would also help with the narrative. I'm just trying to get a sense of sort of, and I'm sorry, one last question. Of the 105, what is the remaining balance currently?
Around 99 million. We've
Wow,
expended
okay.
and that's part of it too. We still
Okay.
have quite a bit of funding left.
Okay.
At
That's also
this
helpful.
point, I think part of our impetus for acting with a sense of urgency is understanding that in the immediate aftermath of these disasters, the sooner those dollars reach people, the more stability we're going to be able to provide, and that's a big driver.
And the timing, while we are helping every qualified disasters across the state, the timing for the specific survivors of the LA fires is specific because they will be exiting forbearance a 12-month, unless you have a Bank of America mortgage. They'll be exiting forbearance this month or next month. So that's where we thought we would try to propose both, because if you are in that little extra AMI that we're trying to reach now, that exiting the forbearance, catching you up and kind of giving you that respite, that also qualifies them again to go back into another partial claim or kind of the waterfall again. So that really gives them 2 years without it being a true effect on their credit. And whatnot of them going into, some sort of default or something, if that was if they were truly not being able to make their payments post-disaster. So that is a timing component. It's not a funding one, but it is the timing.
Yeah, no, okay, thank you. I appreciate you providing me all the numbers.
We're here to answer
I
any
know,
questions.
I know that shocks you from finance.
I just had a real quick follow-up, but how many extra people are we looking at serving between that 211 and the 250?
250,
That is the question. We don't think it's going to move the needle, to be honest, of like a mass amount. We don't have data. The data stops at 175,000 annual per household. It says greater than X. So we don't know. There's no way for us to know, but we think that it does open this up to it, but we don't think that it's going to be an extreme amount of like the numbers there, unless Gustavo has a magic answer.
May I share?
Yes. Perfect.
So some of us in this room have been working on disaster recovery for a few different rounds, and there are some real limitations in the FEMA data, both in the ability to share data, and there is no income qualification that happens there. So what CalHFA has collected is the most robust picture that we have of households who are affected by recent disasters, which is an accomplishment of itself. The other is we have been working closely in partnership with federal agencies to get a truer picture of analysis of what, to Director Henning's question, what we're trying to estimate. And so I feel like there are good approximations, and then combined with the outreach strategy is a way to reach as many of these homeowners. But even with data experts at the federal and state level, we are in a land of approximations. So
I'm good with an approximation.
Excellent. Yeah.
That's kind of what I was looking for. I don't need a per person.
Yeah.
As much as it would be good to know if we're going to be making this policy change, how many additional families are we helping?
That's right. And so that number that's in the board packet of the range between 3,600 and 7,900 households that will be affected, that's not split up by income. That is an approximation at that level, but we know how many households might be affected. So that's the target, and it is through consultation for folks to really understand, because there are different income calculations. It's not just what is your household income, but who's on the mortgage, how many people are paying in, those types of questions. So it requires that income certification that's happening through this process. So it sounds like we will continue to have better data, and that you had some uptake after increasing the income limits before, but that wasn't what was actually moving the needle. And so it sounds like you're looking at that again, as that being some part, but it's really the extension of the months.
Yeah, that's really going to be able to be the most impactful change and the biggest change that we're asking. The AMI is not. Also, I guess to just highlight, we do track the application rates and people going to the website and whatnot. So when we do these announcements, we will see kind of a big uptake, and now it's petered off. And in our experience, like that's not going to kick back up again, right?
Yeah.
So we have gotten down to the single-digit application rates again.
Yeah.
So it's not going to pick back
Yeah,
up.
but it gives some space for those who were already rejected. And I think to your point, Director Michelle.
Michelle is fine.
Great. Is that certainty to homeowners who are trying to piece together what their stack will be to decide? And our ability to prevent displacement and people saying, I can't rebuild because I'm not going to be able to pay for I need to get out of this mortgage right now. So I think that the extension of the months is the most compelling to me, and the space to be able to address the rejection. So I really want to thank you for all the work that you all are doing. And thanks, Chair, for the time.
Yeah. I think I've got two here.
So I've really enjoyed today's conversation, and I appreciate staff and board's really deep commitment to those most vulnerable, right? And I think about what they've gone through. Director Moto, your story is very compelling, and then thinking about those who have less resources. Maybe I would like to know, what are the barriers that they're going through other than the mortgage assistance that's stopping them from participating, right, and coming back to their community. And I know that these dollars aren't eligible for that, but I would love for us to think about how do we help them overcome those barriers. So I would like Director Henning and others, Director Williams, I want to figure out how do we keep serving those most vulnerable, those with the lowest incomes. With that said, I'm nervous about the extension of time, not because I agree, I think that's the more compelling component, but I'm worried about the cliff that someone eventually faces, right? And I was really happy to see the story where she's walking around where her home is being built, right? So we know she has this time period and when she's going to be able to move back into her home and take over her mortgage payments again. But I'm a little nervous about those who may not be as far along. And even with an extension, they're going to get to a cliff and they're going to be in trouble again. And so I guess trying to figure out how you extend those dollars as long as possible to help the most vulnerable makes sense to me. But I just want to make sure you're paying attention to that cliff and thinking about like what is the time period that actually gets to the house being constructed and the mortgage being able to be paid. It's not a question, more of just a comment.
Yeah. We'll take that under advisement.
Thank you, Director Harden.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for all the work that both of you and staff put into this. You know, I mean, clearly a lot of thought, and just listening to your answers to the questions that were giving you, like, impressive. Couple suggestions, and one is off of Director Velasquez's question as relates to data. I know this is like probably really difficult. It's like going and getting phone numbers and email addresses or any way to get to those the affected excuse me, affected people in the community. And one of the things, and this is may already been done, but like I'm trying to think about publicly available information, and like people are voluntarily able to give when they register to vote, their email address, their phone number. I think most people do that. And now with automatic voter registration that's occurring at like the DMV, when you sign up for your license, like the rates in voter registration are like through the roof. And so my question is when we were assembling that data, was there in purchasing data from whichever sources, was that part of it? And like maybe we could inquire about looking at the voter registration data and aligning those addresses that we have with that. And the reason why I say that is because, I mean, this feels to me like it's like a organizing campaign. It's like this is like a union organizing or a community organizing campaign around something, and like really the most effective way, I think we do need to do everything else, but the most effective way is whether it's from us in-house or with a contractor, is like figure out how to directly like track these people down, right? And so I wanted to throw that out. There's voter files, there's companies that hold that information. I think that might be worth us looking at like, you know, is there a way to supplement or readjust resources so that we're doing that direct person contact by tracking down those emails and cell phone numbers. And then second thing, this is more for, I think, I don't necessarily know that it would work in this specific instance, but also as it relates to what I'm hearing from my colleagues on this and what I've heard in previous meetings as it relates to targeting specific demographic groups with our programs. I think it's really important that we, with the media folks that we're working with, that we think about like social media influencers. People are consuming information, their news, everything now, especially these younger generations, through influencers and not through traditional media sources, not through television, not through ads that are popping up. And a lot of these folks are like trusted messengers to specific communities, and you can get them down to like, my colleague was talking about African American members, community members in Altadena. Is there somebody in there that has like a niche that they're, there's a following there? And so, and again, I don't necessarily, this isn't work that we have to do. There's media firms that we're probably already working with that are doing that work, but I would want to just flag it for the future, whether it's with California Dream for All or something else. I think that is something that we need to look at and being innovative and using that new tool to be able to, target these demographic groups that are really difficult to target for programs like this.
Thank you. Those are both really great suggestions that we'll look into.
Executive searches.
Yeah, I wanted to, there's been some discussion here, and I don't want to belabor this discussion, but I just wanted to point out that in the governor's budget this year, there was discussion of supporting the rebuild of the survivors' homes, and it's something that CalHFA is working closely with the governor's office on to help determine a program. And so as the spring moves on, there'll probably be more discussion about that at the board. So,
other questions? I guess I've got a couple, and I want to make sure I understand this right. So stepping back, this CalAssist Mortgage Fund, we've had the money since 2020. Is that right?
That's correct.
but it's not the CalAssist program.
The National Mortgage Settlement.
Thank you, Ms. Label, thank you very much. But we've had the money since 2020. We had, when we stood up the program in June or so, middle of last year, we had 106 million. We've gone through about 5% of it, roughly.
We've distributed, yeah.
Yeah. So, and I got to say that the outreach program that you all summarized, that's very impressive. I mean, clearly a lot of work and thought's gone into that. But I'm thinking of the throughput here. So we've got 6 months roughly in the program. We've got about 5% out. And the idea is to get it in the hands of the people who need it, not keep it in our pockets. So if I'm reading this right, the thought process is that if we want to be putting out more than 5% every 6 months, we need to restructure this a bit by increasing the timeline of benefit, which to me would be a way to move money out to people who need it, and maybe increasing the limits. I mean, that, otherwise, I guess the concern I've got is really, if we keep the standards too tight, we're going to be, a year from now, we could be sitting on 80 million. And that's 80 million of money that individuals who need it don't have.
Correct.
So I just want to make sure I'm kind of getting the framing here right, because it's like, I think what you've done in the marketing has been pretty impressive. I mean, there's some good ideas I've heard in this session here, but incrementally, I don't know, maybe it gets from 5% to 10%. That's not going to move the dial, I don't think. Okay, I want to sure understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other questions, comments from the board before I go to public comment? Yes, Director Henry.
And I apologize for all the questions. I'm just trying to understand this a little bit better. So we got the money in 2020. The fires happened in 2025. And so this money is set up for disasters, all disasters.
No, so the National Mortgage Settlement Fund was a settlement that was given to the state of California, and CalHFA was asked to administer the fund. The fund has very strict allowable uses. There was it can be used for mortgage assistance and housing counseling, HUD certified housing counseling. We immediately stood up a housing counseling program that we are continuing to run and have leveraged throughout the pandemic as well as this. So California homeowners can go get seen by a HUD certified housing counselor for free.
So it's extra money left over from the pandemic.
It was a Great Recession. It was actually a settlement that came out of a lawsuit from the Great Recession, and that the state of California now has, and CalHFA was asked by the administration to administer.
Let me just ask one more quick question. If we have another disaster, which is probably predictable, could we use the same funds for that next disaster?
Yeah. I mean, it's mortgage assistance. It's not disaster related, so it's any sort of mortgage assistance. But this administration chose to. We had the funds remaining, so they chose to use it in this situation.
Just to segue off that, so let's say we work our hardest. A year from now, we've got 75 million left. We really can't. By the terms of the settlement agreement, we can't say, okay, well, we're done with that. We're going to move it into MIP or something.
No, we can only use it for HUD certified housing counseling and mortgage assistance. Yeah. It doesn't have to be tied to disaster though.
Right.
But it would sit there, and then we would have to we would create a different use for it. Okay. Only though for those two uses.
It's constrained, and I remember the board did take action to sort of create this flexibility here.
Correct.
So 6 months ago. Yeah. Okay. Yes, Director Guerrero.
Just a follow-up, and maybe I missed this. So did we award a specific mortgage counseling grant to assist applicants?
Yes. So the resolution the board approved last year about this time, I think it was February or March, we added more, so we did two things, is we allocated more funds to the HUD certified housing counseling program that we are currently operating, and we also added in that fund allocation, we specifically added those HUD certified housing counseling programs to beef up their disaster response counseling services, so like in a capacity building concept. So they were connected with CalOES, with FEMA, and so that they were trained and aware. So we were not only funding the services, like if a homeowner goes in and gets a session, but we were also funding those housing counseling entities to get themselves brought up to date to be able to best serve the actual survivors of the disasters.
So since we're talking about now increasing the number of households served through this program, are we also increasing the resources for mortgage counseling for people who are applying?
No, because at this time we're funding the counsel, the way so the capacity building is a one-time cost, and then the sessions are billed per session. And at this point in time, we're able to fund those.
You can absorb it through the existing resources?
Yeah, I think it's through December of 27.
Okay.
And so we don't need to add funds at this time, but if we did, we'll come back to the board.
Okay. Any other questions? I think I just want to clarify one thing. I think this might be related to something Director Peralta had asked about with respect to the income limits. So I think from my notes there was, you're thinking of raising it, we're at like roughly 2 to 54,000 now. Do I have that right? Is there a?
Yeah, so we base the income limit, it's a static number so that it's more easy for homeowners to understand, because again, income limits and trying to understand what AMI is after my house burnt down, after I lost everything, is the last thing we want homeowners to have to do. Yeah. So it is a static number. I think the ceiling we would be looking to raise it to is in the 250s.
Okay.
I don't want to say 254 because I'm not 100% sure that's the exact number.
Sure. Okay, so that's one variable we change. The other is the extending from the current time period, 3 months to Correct. Something longer, 9 months, whatever.
We're asking for up to 12 months.
Up to 12, right. Which I think from the conversation, I think Director Kurgan raises, that's probably where that change alone is what's going to move money out for this program. Is that kind of my.
Correct.
Looking at this right?
I mean, as far as if you wanted to look at it from a dollar exiting dispersion rate, yeah.
Yeah, the dollars out the door kind of thing.
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, I want to see if there's any other questions from board. I'd like to open up for any public comment or questions. Courtney, can you see if there's anyone in the audience or online who has a comment or question?
Sure. If any members of the public would like to make a comment, you can either raise your hand virtually or here in the room. There's none at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to the board here. We've got a resolution in the package, 2601. I want to see where the board's at on that, if there's a motion to approve or other thoughts with respect
I'll
to.
start the ball rolling. I'll make the motion to approve the resolution as written.
Okay,
Second.
Could I have a
question on the motion?
Yeah, before we make a motion, I'd like to sort of split the question about timing, because I feel very supportive about the timing, but I'm not quite sure on the AMI months.
Okay. And I think I'm going to look over to council here for a second, but we have a motion made and seconded. And so I think unless the author of the motion.
I was really making the motion so we could have that conversation, so totally happy if we amended the motion after the conversation,
Okay.
if that's the way it goes.
You can table the motion, Chair,
Okay.
until the discussion and all of Director Henning's questions are responded to.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
As opposed to having this discussion now the motion is made and just amending the motion if that's what we want to do.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow.
We have a motion, why not have the discussion now? And if after the discussion, there's a motion to amend, we could do a friendly amendment to the motion at that point, right?
I think we might be saying the same thing, but I'm not sure. So you're
I'm saying not-
take
I'm
the
not-
vote or don't take the vote?
No, I'm saying not, well, table means to take the motion.
Put it aside.
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're saying the same thing, I'm just not as good.
We're putting the motion aside. And
Because if I understood Director Henning, you're not prepared to vote at this time, or you want to rework some of the proposed language?
I would just split the resolution in half and have two separate votes instead of one vote.
That I don't know if we can do, sir. I've not had that experience where a motion is severed or bifurcated in real time. I think that the exact language has to be approved by this board for it to be an approved motion.
It would be a separate item, so we wouldn't be able to do
I'm
that.
not sure.
You can amend the
We
you
can
can,
certainly
Yeah.
amend.
And I think that's what he's saying, is amend the resolution.
Amend the language on the resolution, which
Yes.
would then ultimately break it into two potential motions.
So I get, as the maker of the motion, I wanted us to have the conversation. I would support the idea of really making the resolution about increasing the time frame and not necessarily increasing the income limits at this time until we get a little bit more data. So I was hoping that was the conversation we were going to get to, and if that was the way, I would be happy to modify the motion,
okay, so
depending on how everyone else feels.
right. So if I gather here, at least a couple of individuals, we're looking at the idea of extending the term up to 12 months, but not changing the income limits.
I think that's the option that's being requested.
Yeah. And so there's discussion on that. I'd like to see if there's people, if there's a different view on that, or if that's kind of a consensus so we can move ahead.
If I may, Chair, I
Yes,
think the
Kirby.
data, and I don't know if we can go back to the slide, but we have data showing that people are rejected even with the increase of the income limits that came in to effect in October. So I understand the desire to be measured and all the conversation that we've had about deeply targeting. But I do want to question the assumption that we don't have data, because I feel like we saw a pretty high rate of rejection based on people being above AMI. So maybe we could have, I don't know, just fact check me if I'm understanding this incorrectly, but these are current declines that we're having?
yeah.
So this is like existing pipeline of potential applicants showing that there is a demand.
This isn't potential applicants, this is just people that responded, correct?
No, these are applications that were denied, and the reason for the denials in the
There are
chart.
people that asked for it, it's not potential applicants,
No,
it's
it's actual applicants.
people who applied.
Correct.
Those are two different populations. Because I might not have applied because I knew I didn't fall within the AMI.
Okay.
Fascinating.
So happy to clarify my point, is that there are applicants who have been rejected based on their income. And the potential for us to increase income limits could capture these survivors who applied, good proportion of them who were found to be above AMI.
And Director, that was kind of my question before about
Gotcha.
how many are we really trying to get?
Yeah.
And the answer I got was we don't know. Because so if we were trying to capture this population that we have on this slide that talks about, it's like 84 people, families, I should say.
324 is what I'm seeing, who were above AMI.
Oh, they were declined because of above
Yeah.
AMI. If we were trying to include those folks,
Yeah.
I'd like to know how many of the 324 that we were including. Or as pointed out, I think earlier by one of the other directors, are there people, particularly in the Palisades, I think it's rational to say that there's people that are way over that one. So I'm just trying to, if we're doing this for a particular group of people, it would be good to know who we're doing this for, and without that information or data, that lends me to want to support people that are below the AMI limits currently in a more extensive fashion, and that's just my...
The average income of the 400-ish on there is the 234 number.
254.
254 number that we gave earlier.
They are under.
No, the median.
The median income of those households on the decline, so we wouldn't even be serving all of those households.
Yes, but you would serve some.
So-
A subset of those. That's why we're saying the number wouldn't be like raising the income. I just want to make the point to Director Prince, sorry, I know my boss wants to talk, but I'm gonna talk still. That you made the comment waiting on more data, and the only data that we will be getting is decline codes from this point. Unless we do not have the income of those households. So.
I think I've got our Executive Director and then Director Williams.
Yeah, let me just reply quick. So up there, if we add up the 3 different fires, there is, oh, come on.
We're trying to get your image on the screen.
Testing if you had it all in your head.
It looks like there's about 450 rejections due to above AMI. And if the $254,000 was the median, that means we'd have about 225 applicants that would be eligible under this revised things. Again, that does not account for additional hundreds that could be added that did not apply before because they knew they would not be eligible. So I think to get an approximate answer to Dr. Henning's question, my guess is probably in the several hundreds of additional things that might be eligible under this.
So I think I've got Director Williams, and then I'll come back over here.
I'm prepared to support the resolution as presented. We've already discussed that we have a large pool of funds that we've had since 2020 that has not been expended. It'd be very different if we were down, to some much smaller number that was about all of the funds were about to be expended. This is not our hope for all or any of those other programs that are way over subscribed from the day of announcement. And since that's the case, and since we have the resources available, I support this. I'm about deep targeting, as I always will be. But in this case, we have sufficient resources not only to strengthen our deep targeting, but to also increase the eligibility and still not deplete. We've only gotten, 5%? That's a marginal number compared to the total number of people who were affected. So I get all of the things that we've discussed, but we're sitting on a substantial amount of resources, and we've only seen, with all of your incredible efforts, a 5% impact rate when there's so many more. So I support this in moving it forward. Yes, we can get additional data as more people apply and may or may not be accepted. But we're in a situation of a crisis, and we have the resources to be able to expand that, and I support that.
I've got Director Velasquez, and then I think Director Molotov.
I don't think, I think we're wrestling with a couple things. One is a vote on the principle as to whether this board believes this program should serve higher income individuals compared to how the program has been operating. I think that's kind of like a principle driver of this vote. The other is the utilization. We know we have the resources. On the utilization, I don't know if you answered this question before or not, but of the declines, if we raise the income, what is the percentage of utilization that we would achieve by raising the income? If you look at the decline so far. Do you have that number?
I know that about half, if we were, it depends first of all to what extent we're gonna raise the income limits. If we brought it up to around that $254,000 number, that's the 180% AMI, we know that about half of the folks that we have declined from the program would be eligible.
Okay, that substantial amount of utilization by taking a vote that includes where we will raise the income. So I just wanna.
But I will also say that represents about, I think that's about, that percentage of half is like around like 60 declines. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, so if we raised it to that 250 level, then it would be 60 applications we would have approved.
It's
but
harder
if we raised it to the 200% AMI mark, that would be 81, so that would have been 66% of the declines.
The absolute numbers is harder because
Yeah.
it's the percentages I think that matter most when we're thinking about how much utility, if we take this vote, we will have in this program by raising the income. So the council through the chair, the council indicated that there is no way to splitting the resolution.
I'm sorry, sir. I was just confused about the splitting concept. We can certainly revise, take out whatever portions of this resolution as it is currently written that a quorum doesn't agree to. I just was not clear I thought that Director Prince had moved to approve as written, and I thought I heard Director Henning say he wanted to further discuss and possibly delete a portion of the reso as well. Did I misunderstand, Director Velasquez?
It was amend and then take up the AMI increase as a second item.
Yeah, and if I could point out in the resolution, the package, that's part 3. That's the part that deals with changing the AMI. So I think one concept being proposed to basically cut that out, let everything else go ahead, which basically extends out the term. So I guess that maybe.
My suggestion was actually slightly different, not just to cut it out, but to vote that as a separate item, so not to violate the original principle. So
a separate resolution that would be just item 3
yes.
here.
So that you still are able to vote on both items?
Yeah.
But
So Chair Cervantes, you can take up this topic because it is properly agendized as a discussion item before. So I guess you'd want to move to approve as it pertains to length of time for assistance.
Yeah.
And then you'd want to have a secondary discussion about whether or not to increase an AMI, and if so, to what level. And that is appropriate to take up right now.
Well,
Okay.
so I guess my take, by the way, if I do the math, 250 times the 10,000, that's like the dollar amount, right? 250 that you came up with that got rejected because of their over income. Anyways, that was the number in my head. So it's not that significant. I hate to say it's a couple of $1 million. So I would appreciate a motion to amend the motion made because it was made and seconded, and let's have a vote about, because I've heard compelling arguments on both sides. I'm going to be more on Director Williams' side. I feel like we're ready to move, but I think a vote from the board so we don't have to have a split and then take another vote. Just like see if there's enough votes now to split them. If there's not, then we can move on to the original motion.
I've got a couple of board members who have had their hand up. I want to make sure we hear from them too. So I think it's Director Moulton and then I think Director Cavillo as well.
I'm okay, my question got answered.
Great, thank you.
I think again, being new to this, hearing the different sentiments, I think there's a concern that raising the AMI serves folks that may have other resources or may not be as needy. And I think that's a valid perspective, not only in the sense that we want to be good stewards of the capital, no matter how much it's out there, and the perception that you're helping people that we live in the California bubble, but outside of California, that sounds like a very large number, right? You're helping somebody making $200,000. What I would say is that I would support splitting the baby. My sense is that a lot of this has to do with insurance and the way that it works with ALE and the assistances that provide. You will get a living allowance for some period of time, either 12 months to up to 3 years, mostly 12 to 24 months. Most programs are right around 12 months. So I think that, not speaking for anybody's behalf, but I think we would all support helping somebody in need for a much longer period of time, as opposed to helping a $200,000 earner for 3 months. And so, I think what is happening right now is people are reaching the end of that 12-month ALE assistance. And I think you will get a lot of people that will apply for the extension that are in deep need. And I think supporting all of the comments here, the targeting every single person. There were 6,000 homes in the Palisades, 6,000 in Altadena, Pasadena, roughly. Belongs to a WhatsApp group. There is constant communication, and so the penetration just needs to be done intelligently, because everybody continues to talk about this. Everybody is on a forum about an insurance policy. So I think that I would again support bifurcating this or splitting it so that we can vote on the two separate issues.
Okay. So, Director Peralta.
I'm sorry, I just, a clarification, and again, I think that Mr. Henning also already brought this up. So again, to Mr. Williams' point, the amount of funding that is available is sizable, right, is to your point. And I hear the conversation around timing, right? And the longer we get out, the further we get out from these disasters, the harder it is to capture anybody, or really to provide this kind of relief, because they've already created other paths for themselves for sustainability. Remind me though again, so if we don't, there's no expenditure cutoff, but this is for only disasters 23 to 25. Obviously that time period has lapsed, so 25 is closed, and God help us, we did not have anything huge happen, at the end of the year, which was great. But we don't have, if we don't expend the funds for however long, let's say a year or 2 years, whatever it is. And I apologize, I think you answered this a little bit to Mr. Henning, but remind me again, can we adjust the time period of which the disasters in which we cover?
Yeah, that's all the criteria that was set for this program. The funds would just sit and we would wait to expend them.
We'd have to stand up another program?
It depends. It depends on timing. If we were to, there's also a whole mechanics and operations and coding of applications and computer systems and training of staff to process. So, if we shut the program down, then yeah, we would have to stand another one up. If it was just continuing and there was unfortunately another disaster we wanted to add to the list, then obviously
that's my question.
more
We could
simple.
extend the program and the dates of disaster coverage.
Correct, but we wouldn't want to continue to pay for the infrastructure if we don't have people to serve as well. I'm just saying,
I understand
it doesn't
that, and
it can't sit dormant in that sense. We would need to shut it down.
I understand that, and
Yeah.
I wish that we could say that 2025 is the last time we see disasters in
100%.
California, but again, this kind of goes to the balance of how do we utilize these funds to help the lowest income, the most needy, those who have been affected, and do you, to again Mr. Williams' point with this large pot of money, do we try to kind of for lack of a better word, sop up more of it now? Or do you continue the program, understanding that the likelihood of another disaster in California, whatever that might look like, unfortunately will likely happen, and do you keep some of that for the next thing?
Yeah, depending on the timing. I
So,
guess the other point I'd like to
That's
make.
why I was asking about like how that adjustment could or wouldn't look, our hands tied, because obviously if our hands are tied, then I think that answers the question a little easier about income levels and everything else, so.
And I mean, happy to, do what the board wishes. Just making the point out, there is also an infrastructure of running the program and communicating to the public. So that's why we tried to bring all the changes to you at this moment, because it does get confusing for the consumer. We wouldn't be able to turn around and say, oh, next month we do want to raise the AMI. It would be, so communicating all the changes at once to these populations is helpful. I'm not saying, happy to do with the will of the board, and I understand and respect that conversation about serving the most vulnerable first. But from an infrastructure and operations perspective, I just want to make sure we're level setting. We're not going to turn around and be able to bring back we'd have to agendize it, bring back another thing, and then implement it. So I'm not trying to say make the decisions we best feel serves our population with these funds. I just want to make sure there's also a timeliness of operationalizing and communicating that to the masses.
Chair Savant. Yes, real quick. This is a great discussion, by the way. I appreciate everyone's viewpoint. Just so that I go on the record, I'm okay with the motion as is.
Which is in the package.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, I would go back to, I think that there needs to be a motion to amend the existing motion and have that passed or not passed, and then we can go.
Yeah. So I'm going to move this to closure here. I do want to say, I really appreciate this entire conversation. It's been very thoughtful. As much as I'm a data geek and would love more, sometimes I think the perfect is the enemy of the good. You've done a lot of work, staff has done a lot of work to sort of like best discern what's out there, what the impact might be, but we have uncertainty, and that's what we're dealing with. I think from my view, I really kind of align with the point that Director Williams made earlier, which is just get it done. I think to move us along here, what I think I'd recommend is then we have a motion in the package. There's item 3, which is the part that deals with the AMI. And I think what I'm hearing is that the Director Prince would like to amend the motion you made.
No, I'm actually saying there should be a motion to amend and a second to that motion, and then a vote, and if it fails, then we go back to the original motion, which is to accept as is, which is with others, I would accept as is.
Okay, so a motion to amend, that is to remove part 3, okay?
Is there a motion?
Unless there is not a motion.
Yeah, if there's not, then we go to the original motion and vote on it.
So so you made the motion originally, so you're amending your original motion?
No, I'm keeping my motion as is to adopt the resolution as written by staff with all of the recommendations made by staff.
Okay, so that's the motion on the floor.
That was the one that was moved and seconded.
So to help your confused chair out here, then I think we have a motion on the floor, which is the one in the package. Voting for that means increasing the time limit and the AMI limit. A vote yes is for that. A vote no would be, in effect, to set up a follow-on motion, which would extract part 3, the AMI change.
Yes.
All looking at that? Okay, people are nodding. It's like, I think we're all.
The way I was saying yes.
Thank you. So then motion made, seconded, I think it might have been Director Hardiman, to approve the motion in the package, which would allow for the extension of the time limit and the AMI change as well. That's what's in the package. Unless there's any other questions, and I'm hoping not. Courtney, can you please call the roll on that?
Certainly. Ms. Cabildo?
Aye.
Chair Cervantes?
Aye.
Ms. Kurgan? Aye. Mr. Hardiman?
Aye.
Mr. Henning?
No.
Mr. Moto?
Yes.
Mr. Prince?
What's the motion? I'm joking. Yeah, I said yes, sorry.
There's a time for that.
Mr. Fiegels?
Yes.
Mr. Velasquez?
Yes.
Dr. White?
Yes.
And Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Resolution 2601 as written is approved.
Okay.
Thank you all. That was long.
That was a more involved discussion than I thought it would have, but frankly, it was very thoughtful. And before you both really, I really want to hand clap for staff for the work you've done.
Not for us. Can we, not for us, no offense, sorry.
Okay.
But for the staff behind us and watching on the, they're the real ones that are doing the work.
I think the standing up a program, getting it running, all the outreach that was presented, really to help an area where there's real need. And I know there's going to be, well, like the Santa Cross here, but we're in a public session. You know, like, well, there could well be another disaster in California. If there's funds left, we can maybe reprogram that. But at least we've got funds on hand. We've had it for 5+ years and making good use to help people in need. So thank you all for this. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, with that, I think we are on to a topic on, since we are the California Housing Finance Agency, we'll talk about finance and our ratings. Please.
Thank you, Chair Cervantes. Good morning, members of the board. We're here to talk about Robert's Rules of Orders. In the next 3 hours, we can go over precedent motions. I'm actually here today to talk about two different topics. One is capital markets, and two is our ratings upgrade that the executive director mentioned earlier in his remarks. On the first slide here, excellent. So CalHFA's team monitors several capital markets actually across the agency. So first of all, we monitor the agency specified MBS markets that drives most of our single family programs. We also monitor taxable bonds on the municipal markets, and those are affected on a day-to-day basis by the trading of the U.S. Treasuries and that funds the agency's My Access program for home ownership. And lastly, we also monitor tax-exempt bonds, and that again finances our multifamily permanent loan program. As you can see on the next slide, interest rates actually, after the initial shock that we talked about it, a little less than a year ago in April with the announcement of Liberation Day and the tariffs, rates actually have been relatively steady, especially in the past couple of months. But the other thing we've noticed is that the value of tax exemption has improved considerably over the past few months as well. The next slide shows the two yield curves. You can see that the yield curve itself has remained relatively steady on the long end. And so when we think about, I'm going to mention this, in terms of projections, when we think about the announcement of rate cuts by the Federal Reserve, it doesn't really have an impact to where we lend. Our programs on the single family side are 30-year mortgages, on the multifamily side are 17-year or 30-year loans, or actually up to 40 years. So again, you can see the relative flatness in that sort of long period of time. So a lot of the action really has not affected the agency's cost of capital. On the next slide, you'll see in recent news, the president did announce a purchase of $200 billion of mortgage-backed securities, and that was in an attempt to lower mortgage rates. And you can see that, and that announcement was on January 8th. And so you can see what rates were there, and it did have a little bit of an impact, which lasted about maybe a week, and then rates have sort of resumed because the news sort of settled in terms of what that actually meant for the actual capital markets. And so I know I'm going to read, basically the rates today in our 30-year conventional is 6%, so where they were at when the announcement was made. FHA rates are today that the agency also said is at 5 7/8, so again, the same result. So no net change there. On the My Access program, I mentioned it was affected by U.S. Treasuries. Treasuries, you may have heard there's been some geopolitical news recently. So Treasuries actually have traded up in yield, and that affects our My Access program. So in fact, instead of the 6.75 you saw there at the announcement on the 8th, our rates today were 6 7/8, so it went up by 1/8%. Because again, we are affected on the My Access bond program by the trading of U.S. Treasuries there, so rates have gone up. Lastly, I'll close with the economic forecast. The Fed is projected to have 2 rate cuts this year in calendar year 2026, and economic growth will trend downwards to 2%. I will also note that, again, the yield curve will steepen. However, it will not affect our programs as they are sort of necessarily affect the programs as of today because they are longer-term borrowings. I'm going to switch now to, so we talked a little bit about things sort of outside of the agency's direct control. Let's talk about things that are a little bit more underneath our control. As our executive director mentioned, we've received an upgrade from Moody's Investor Service. Oh, sorry, Moody's Ratings. I think they changed their branding. And to AA1. This is the second highest rating available to any issuer in the world. And so, and this is our 4th upgrade over the past 4 years for the agency. And I want to just kind of spend a couple seconds here talking about this affects our issuer credit rating. So that's the agency's rating itself. So it reflects the opinion of our overall creditworthiness and our overall ability to meet financial commitments. So what do I mean by that? The agency makes financial promises all the time. We make promises. And so if you look at our, I think next month we will have a review of the financial results of our fiscal year 2025 audit. But in that audit, we have made promises of $1.39 billion of multifamily loan commitments, right? So these are not things we bonded for, but we've made promises to deliver loans equating to $1.39 billion. And this reflects that ability for the agency to deliver those funds. We've made those promises, and it's an external third party's opinion whether or not we're able to do so. We also have issue ratings, which are specific obligations. So we have 2 indentures, one on the multifamily side and one on the single family side. Those are rated, as you can see, they're AA, AA2 on the multifamily side and AA+, AA1 on the mortgage home ownership side. On the next slide, we'll show sort of the historical trends. I mentioned that we received 4 upgrades over the past 4 years. This is actually part of the longer trend, the upward trajectory of the agency over the past decade. You can see all those upgrades there since the middle of 2015. I also mentioned that when we first got our first upgrade in sort of after I joined the agency, that's, again, it's easier to kind of go down than up. You can see how quickly the agency, when it fell short, was downgraded. And it's actually been a little bit, it took us twice as long to recover to the same level. So just wanted to make sure that we still understand that it's easier to go down than up in terms of ratings. On the next slide, we actually show where do we stand. So when we look across all the other HFAs, and this is the issuer credit ratings, not our indenture, so this is the overall. We have gone, for S&P, when we started 4 years ago, 14 HFAs were rated higher than the agency, and 1 was lower. As of today, 1 is higher, 19 are lower. And in Moody's, we started 4 years ago, 10 were higher, 20 were lower, and now 1 is higher, 34 are lower. So the agency has equated, so this means where we stand now is the agency has a credit rating equal to the federal government at AA1, AA+.
If I could ask, who's the HFA, which HFA is the AAA?
It's West Virginia.
West Virginia.
I mean, you think about it, a AAA is going to be rarefied air in our space, right? It's greater than the U.S. sovereign rating, but we also were of a size, and our mission and sort of our reach and scope. I haven't checked, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that West Virginia doesn't have $1 billion for multifamily commitments that they need to deliver over the next 3 years. Yeah. We do. I want to end with our last. Our issuer credit rating is a combination of our financial performance and the strong leadership of this board of directors and the management of the agency. So these are just some of the snippets of what was said about the agency's leadership and management and the governance of this board of directors to keep us on the right path for financial sustainability. I was told to keep my remarks brief, so I'm happy to take any questions from the board.
Thank you very much. Other questions, comments from the board? Director Williams?
So this may have already gone out, and maybe I missed it, but as we talk about social media and broadcasting, I think you need to be shouted from the rooftops that we're the bad boys. And we got our act together.
With your picture on the post.
No, I'm not vain, I'm just truthful. That's a difference. But again, it just keeps getting better. When you think you've, hit a home run, and suddenly you just figure out, well, there's 2 home runs, and then there's 3 home runs, and then you're just the championship team after that. And so to you, Erwin, and the entire team, we're making history. We just celebrated the 50th anniversary, but in 50 years, we never achieved this. And in a relatively short period of time, when you look at, all that we've done as an agency in 50 years, so this is remarkable for a public agency. I don't, and so, we'll get over West Virginia. But again, thank you to that. And then to the other point about the president's big announcement, about him talking to his representatives, about, this $200 billion. So the truth of the matter is, it was a big announcement, but has almost zero impact as it relates to interest rates, which was supposedly to be helpful. But the truth is, and we know that truth is not important at certain levels in Washington, D.C., but the truth is, it had very little impact, and it was more of a public relations announcement than a market impact strategy. Is that correct?
Yeah, it had a very temporary impact as the market sort of figured out what the announcement was meaning. I'm not sure. I believe it wasn't made. I believe it was the equivalent of a tweet, essentially, right? And then, so it came out at an unusual hour, and then the market sort of reacted, and then it sort of reversed itself over time. So it had a very short-term impact in terms of market rates.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
Chair.
Yes, our Executive Director.
Yeah, no, thank you, Erwin, for that presentation, and I do really appreciate all of the work that all the CalHFA staff put into making this happen. As Erwin said, I mean, the financing team, our fiscal services team, puts a lot of the groundwork in, but it is the whole team that has done the work, the whole staff, to help get us to this place. But I also want to make sure that we're focused on. This is one of the tools to our ultimate mission, which is getting more people in homes across California, and this is one of the ways we can lever our resources to make that happen, and that's really the focus going forward. Is it shows the financial position we're in, and now as we meet next month and as we meet over the next few months about our plan for the coming years, how do we put these resources and this available this rating that we have to use?
Can I just echo that? Because I think it is great, as Director Williams has pointed out, to have the success, but the success is going to be really about the housing units built and higher volume built as a result of this tool. So I just totally agree. I'm looking forward to next month and the kickoff of really thinking about how do we have that next 50-year journey for this agency and the impact it's going to have. It's really exciting.
And I say that having lived through all of those downgrades back in the day.
As the longest serving board member, I was in those bad years too. So.
Well, thank you, Director Prince. We won't blame you for that, but thank you for the perspective. Any other comments? If I could put out, I think I would say, as much as, I think the work that staff has done in financial management and the board as well has been extraordinary when you look at the recovery from the trough of our downgrades. And I'd say that this is about as good as it gets. I don't think we want a AAA.
I don't think it's probably not achievable even. Because again, if you look at the U.S. sovereign, that's sort of our limit anyway. We're at there. We're equivalent to the U.S. federal government.
Yeah, and I really have a mind with our executive director in that I think it just gives us more tools to really fulfill our mission to help Californians find affordable and safe, decent housing. So all to a good end. Unless there's any other comment or question, I want to see if there's any public comment or question. Courtney, can you open it up for the present group?
Any members of the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand virtually or here in the room. There's none at this time.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Dan. Well done.
Thank you,
Item 6 is a presentation. I didn't give you your due. Thank you for the rest of the board for backstopping me. We have item 6, which is a presentation of affordable housing finance workshop. And Gina Ferguson, please, and I'm going to hand this to our executive director.
Yeah, so just a little framing for this presentation. Gina Ferguson, who works at Department of Housing and Community Development, previously has been at the Tax Credit Allocation Committee for several years, so we've worked together in different ways for a long time, has been tasked with leading the state's Affordable Housing Finance Work Group, which was created by Assembly Bill 519, I believe 2023, that asked the state to look at ways that the various state housing departments could work together to streamline and create a single award and allocation process so that developers trying to build affordable housing would not have to come in and apply to 2 or 3 or 4 different entities to get money. So Gina, I will kick it over to you, but I will, full disclosure, I worked very closely with Gina in my previous role and helped get this off the ground, and am very interested in how CalHFA can support this effort and make it work better and be engaged in a way that ultimately gets affordable housing built more quickly and more efficiently in the state. So, go ahead, Gina.
We do have some PowerPoint slides, and I wanted to say thank you, Director Sertich. You did launch and frame and get all the resources out for the work group, and your continued leadership is essential. I also wanted to mention that from the Treasurer's Office, Executive Director Marina Wyant, Executive Director of SIDLAC and TCAC, her direction and leadership are also essential to the collaboration and coordination that we've been doing. And acknowledge folks we have in the room, Deputy Secretary Kurgan and Director Velasquez. Again, the leadership and support, we wouldn't be where we are without that. Thank you very much. We do have a few board members that are members of the Affordable Housing Finance Work Group. So I just want to thank Santa Clara County Housing Authority and Fresno Housing Authority, Director Prince, for your engagement, participation, and support in the work group. All right, so on our next slide, as Mr. Sertich said, Assembly Bill 519 requires California Housing Finance Agency, Department of Housing and Community Development, California Debt Limit Allocation Committee, and the California Tax Credit Allocation Committee to convene a work group to develop recommendations for consolidated application and coordinated review costs for multifamily affordable housing finance programs. The work group's main focus is this. But the bill does include other items that the work group is to address in a required report to the legislature, and I'll touch on those in an upcoming slide. So on the next slide, we've got the members listed. The work group convening members are the four state housing entities that administer affordable housing programs. The work group's main focus, as well as affordable housing developers, local governments, which are represented generally by housing authorities, tribal governments, and other stakeholders. Those are the membership of the work group. And just to give you kind of a sense of the breakdown, in the work group there are about 20 affordable housing developers. There are 12 local government and tribal government entities. There is a group of about 8 lenders, bond counsel, tax credit investors, and syndicators. And then a small number of consultants and advocacy firms. That's kind of the makeup of what the work group is. Members were selected as a diverse group of stakeholders to ensure the recommendations are comprehensive. For-profit and nonprofit developer members operate across the geographic regions of the state. All right, so on the next slide we have just a snapshot of roles and responsibilities. As we've said, the main function of the work group is to develop recommendations for systematic coordination across affordable housing programs to bring together and align the current fragmented system. The work group convened last June and holds monthly member meetings. We also have smaller subgroups that are providing input on areas that are required by the report, which is highlighted on the next slide. So on the next slide, the work group's recommendations are not only for coordinated coordinated review process, they also need to address whether a unified scoring system is possible, what programs are part of the consolidated system, and what statutory change would benefit better alignment across the programs. Also, what the application process looks like, and for the state entities, we also need to consider how data is captured, shared, memorialized, and published. So on the next slide, we have a timeline. This chart gives some highlights of what's occurred to date, what's planned, and also the timing of the required reporting. Last summer, the work group kicked off with broad discussion topics, and early on we had a lot of creative ideas about how to take a different approach in evaluating competitive application projects from what we do today. And we also had input on disconnects and pain points in the current systems. So current processes and systems were reviewed in the context of what makes sense to be retained in a coordinated system and used. CIDLAC's system has been discussed as the most recently updated system that reflected stakeholder collaboration and consideration of state housing policies. The work group did highlight the importance of understanding what the state housing goals would be prioritized in the consolidated system and how. Based on these discussions, we are developing recommendations for what would be included in the unified scoring system. And last month, the state agencies documented the progress and outlined a potential timeline for implementation as required by the bill and shown here. All right, so next, as of now, there are recommendations forming for programs to include it in a consolidated system, how coordinated application evaluations would be conducted, and also a proposed timeline for implementation. And so we'll start on the next slide, based on the work group member discussions and also the state members' joint determination. On the following slide, we'll see the programs. Cool. Thank you. So these have been identified. We still do need to do some work to, as we get more detailed into what the coordinated system looks like and how we can align the programs. We'll have to dig deeper into their statutory requirements and make sure we can all put them in a consolidated system, but this is the list right now. We've got the CalHFA Mixed Income Program Subsidy Loan, CIDLAC's tax exempt bond financing for qualified residential rental projects, and TCAC's federal and state low income housing tax credits. From HCD, we have the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program, the SuperNOFA programs, which are the Multifamily Housing Program, the Infill Infrastructure Grant Program, Joe Cerner Junior Farm Worker, and the Veterans and Housing Illness Prevention Programs. Many of the funds in those SuperNOVA programs are near full expenditure, so we may not have many of those to be part of the aligned system. So we look forward to future budgets to see what's possible. And then for federal programs that are administered by HCD, we have the home investment programs, the National Housing Trust Fund program, and the CDBG disaster recovery. So that's federal government funds for disaster recoveries. That is what is on the table for aligning in one application and coordination system. Okay, so as you might expect, input and perspectives from the work group members are diverse and they sometimes differ. One area that they differ in perspectives is the level of coordination and the steps in the coordinated review process. Because of this, there are currently 2 coordination options that generally reflect the work group perspectives. A fully coordinated simultaneous review and award process, and a coordinated review and 2-step award process. Both options do aim to resolve the current inefficiencies of the system and the hurdles that developers face applying for affordable multifamily housing financing. So under the first option, which is the column on the left, a single application is submitted for all state funds the project is requesting. Applications are scored under a unified scoring rubric, and there's a simultaneous coordination of application review and across the state housing, the 4 state housing agencies, and then simultaneous awarding decisions. So that's the most streamlined option that we have. But we do, as I said, we have diverse opinions, and we also have implementation thoughts and how we do want the recommendations to be successful, and we want to put forward proposals that can actually come to fruition. So we do have option 2, but before we talk about before I talk about that, I thought it might be helpful to talk a little bit about the reorganization of the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and how it connects with the recommendations of the work group. So the newly created California Housing and Homeless Agency will have under its direction the Housing Development and Finance Committee, and the Housing and Development Finance Committee, or HDFC, is in the planning stage and is officially created on July 1st of this year. So over time, the oversight of some of the HD programs and the CalHFA mixed income program subsidy loan are expected to be administered through HDFC. And so this will take some time, but for purposes of just being a little bit clearer, when I talk about this option on the other side of the screen, I am going to refer to it as HDFC administering that. So for this two-path coordination, an application is either submitted for state housing program funds to HDFC, or it's submitted to SIDLAC or TCAC, depending on the funding that's being requested. The same application would be used whether developers apply for multiple state housing programs from HDFC and SIDLAC and TCAC, or they just apply to SIDLAC and TCAC. And then for those requesting funds through HDFC, the applications would be scored and reviewed by HDFC staff under their program requirements, and those would be proactively streamlined and aligned with SIDLAC and TCAC regulation requirements as much as possible. Awarded applications, those that were awarded by HDFC, those that were also requesting bonds and credits would be forwarded to SIDLAC and or TCAC by HDFC, not by the awardee, and those would be reviewed for their threshold requirements, and in short order would receive an award of state-funded of bonds from a state-funded pool, and also tax credits from TCAC. That's meant to be a sort of administrative process, not what it is today, where a developer applies to one agency and then goes and applies to another. It's the HDFC would hand off their awarded projects to SIDLAC and TCAC, and these would not be evaluated again under another scoring system. Only one agency would rank and score. And then as an integral part of that, HDFC would match its funding and would only award as many projects as there are bonds available, and that would be annually predetermined, the amount of bonds set aside for state-funded projects. So a little bit more complicated, but also meant to be more streamlined and seamless than we have today. And then on our last slide, this is what's currently proposed as an implementation timeline. Looking at items for 2026, the state housing members of the work group are working on coordinated review planning, and we also will be started on consolidated application planning. We'll also be looking at potential legislative changes to make programs work together better, and of course drafting the report that's due to the legislature on or before July 1st. And then in 2027, we have a lot of activity as well. Before that, as I mentioned, the Housing Development and Finance Committee will be launched. HCD and CalHFA programs under and through HDFC will be working on regulation changes and guidelines alignment with SIDLAC and TCAC, and it's my understanding SIDLAC and TCAC will be doing the same as we look forward to working together. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to see if there's any comments, questions from the board. I've got Director Williams.
Got just a couple of first of all, I'm glad to see that it's moving forward, and June will be here before we all know it, and it's off to the races. But one of the things that, as we are looking at aligning these scoring criteria and funding criteria, I think it's important that we consider what that criteria is. Because what we've consistently found is, and I'm speaking for the Central Valley, that there are requirements and bonus points for density and for close to transportation and a lot of things that do not apply to the Central Valley. So we're always feeling like, in some ways, we're being set up to compete with Los Angeles and with Santa Clara, and other places in the state, and we will never be able to compete with them. We won't be able to compete with density. We won't be able to compete with transportation systems. We serve counties that don't always have grocery stores within 6 blocks of the housing that we're proposing. And I think we need to, as we're creating these systems, take those realities into consideration when we are creating scoring. Because it would be a travesty for us to go through all of this realignment and we still end up like stepchildren in the shadows of our larger metropolitan communities when there are thousands of deserving individuals who don't live in high density and high population areas. And I don't know if that's even being a part of the discussion or where it's going, but I will always be raising the red flag. I think regional allocations could be one way of addressing that inequity that has continued to exist for decades. But some way that needs to be addressed. And this is a shameful plug. Housing authorities, we are partners and we are essential elements in moving forward housing programs at every level of housing, whether it's unhoused or single-family home ownership. And so as the Central Valley's premier affordable developer, I won't miss this opportunity to say that we want and deserve a seat at the table and consideration, not as an afterthought, but with the project-based vouchers that we contribute, with the development that we do on our own. This is an opportunity to have a reset for California because we've been an essential part of the housing pipeline for decades, and we want to continue that successful partnership.
I love that shameless plug. Can I add to that, as we're both members of the California Association of Housing Authorities, and there's roughly 90 members representing all kinds of communities throughout California, and we have a really hard time being able to come to a consensus that then takes into consideration all of the criteria that Director Williams just raised. And so that's my way of saying, like, so I think I've been in California 20 years, and we've been talking about this unified approach. I've been in housing for 35 years, both in Colorado and Washington. We've been talking about this, and that you're getting close is amazing, right? Because all of these new programs that get added, whether federal at the state level, have different sets of rules, and it creates different approaches, and finally bringing that all together is fantastic. So I just want to give that acknowledgement. And just going back to, from the housing authority's perspective, because I do think we're the backbone of housing development in California in so many ways, that I think about, like, how do you create a system that is like devoid of politics at some level, right? That's really about the needs and fairness. I think about, and Director Corrigan and I have had these conversations for years about how do we have the alignment at the local level get respected once something comes to the state, because sometimes that doesn't happen, right? The City of San Jose, the Housing Authority in Santa Clara County have these alignment conversations, and then the projects that are at the top of our list aren't the ones funded, right? And ones that aren't on our list get funded. And so there are these issues about, like, does the local perspective matter? Is the local perspective sometimes a little limiting? And the state has the right approach in what they're doing. It's just a really hard conversation to think about. So I just feel like the more we get to fairness, and I don't know how you do that, void of the politics of it all, I think is just really amazing effort. And then the last thing is, it is so true. ASIC, I think, is a wonderful program. It does not benefit the Central Valley, and not just my past experience, but I think from the members of the CalHFA organization, that they have not, the Valley has not been served through some of these programs, and it needs to be paid attention to. So I totally agree with that.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Williams, and thank you, Director Prince. Yes, those voices are in the work group, and we are really thinking about how we can have more equity across the scoring system that really recognizes the different on the ground circumstances of the different regions. It is challenging. We're going to do our best. And we're also going to do a lot of testing, right? I think we want to get a system in place so that we can test how different geographies, how different locations within one county fare against each other. We are looking at the SIDLAC tiebreaker kind of as a base, but also really how we might modify that so that these challenges in competing against another region or another area that you're close to are, as much as possible, are more equitable. So it is on our mind, and we do have a lot of actually some creative ideas coming from the work group, and we're going to test those out and see if they actually work when projects are competing against each other. And I know Mr. Surdich, Director Surdich, does have a lot of ideas about how we can integrate local perspectives in there, and that's been on my mind as well. So just know we may not hit every point the first launch, but we do have a lot of big ideas and a lot of long-term, statewide collaboration. We're going to do our best to launch it best, but we're also going to monitor how well it's doing and how we can do better long-term. And hopeful that the recommendations are taken up and the system is actually implemented.
Chair Samantha said progress, not perfection, so it sounds like you're doing amazing progress. It's fantastic.
Thank you. Other questions, comments from the board? Yes, Director Kurgan.
Yeah, Gina's work on this has been just exceptional, and we're not going to hear her full bio, but the range of experience that you offer through work in the Treasurer's Office, work at HCD, and a career's worth of coordination with developers and local governments has really made you the right person. Tony, you were also very good at this while you were there. Just to say, Gina, your leadership and steady leadership has been so welcome. There were important changes last year with the change to the 50% test, which makes this conversation about thinking about the system more holistically really timely. But this is also an opportunity to make sure that California is not an anomaly in a negative way, about having not just a bifurcated system, but one that is split in so many dimensions. To take away all the acronyms, this work is about acknowledging the complexity, and that complexity adds time and expense to development. And when we're thinking about delivering affordable housing, that is the opposite of what we are hoping for. That is the opposite of efficiency. And so this moves us really in a significant way, both conceptually and with people who are accessing the system and those who are sometimes left out, to say, how can we make this more efficient? It doesn't mean that it results in budget for us to do that. There will still be hard choices, of course, but that we are moving with the budgets that we have in a way that spreads as far as we can to the most number of projects. And this multi-step process that we have right now of projects waiting in their own pipeline and in ours for years is not getting us there any faster. So no acronyms, nothing like that. It's just like to assert that as a goal, and to mention, thank you for mentioning the reorganization of the housing agency. We're always happy to talk more about this, and I'm sure Secretary Moss will when you all are here in February. The new housing agency is not the same thing as the one-stop shop that we're talking about, but it is a very important part of what we can do in that new framework. And so just a lot of appreciation and thanks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And
Well,
Dr. Velasquez.
Do you want to, Mr.
Go first.
Okay. Okay, so just echoing Ms. Kurgan's appreciation for Gina, for all the work that you and your team have done. But Mr. Surdich too, he was spearheading this process right before the governor took him away. But he's still very much in it, by the way. You're not, you're really in it as well. And just echoing what Mr. Williams said, of course, public housing authorities are at the table. You'll always be. You are partners and close allies. And yes, your perspective also is very diverse. I mean, you all have to grapple with the diversity of your constituents and the people you serve, just as we do in this AB 519 process. We have several dozens of stakeholders that are knee-deep in the planning. And I would say AB 519 was signed into law way before the governor proposed the creation of this committee, but I see it extremely relevant, almost as the foundation under which this committee will become operationally. And it is all about ensuring that we bring housing to scale and as quickly as possible. That's what this is really about. It's consolidating, integrating, reducing cost, moving projects from inception to reality as quickly as possible. And we can't keep doing it the same way that we've done it. California is the exception in this area of delivering statewide housing, affordable housing financing. It is the exception, but it won't be in the years ahead because of this process that includes the execution of AB 519 and the governor's plan to integrate the delivery of the system in a much faster way. So thank you to all the working group, to the members of CalHFA and HCD and the Treasurer's Office that participate, because this is very exciting, and it will be something that we will all enjoy to speed up housing in the future.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add one additional thing, which is how does CalHFA fit into all of this? I think there was one piece there on the slides about the CalHFA mixed income program subsidy piece being moved into this single allocation process. From my perspective, and again, we will talk more about this as the year goes on, but I fully expect CalHFA, as we build out our multifamily lending programs, to be an integral part of this in a way that we become, a preferred lender. We become a supporting member of the team. We're able to support HCD in their funds, the way they're distributing their funds. We're able to support SIDLAC and TCAC with the resources that they need to get their work done in a way that also furthers not only our mission, but helps build out our reach and our platforms to help really ultimately fulfill the larger state mission of getting more housing built. So that's the goal that we're all in here together.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I have serious issues with Tony getting this much kind of acknowledgement. That was a great presentation.
Have you been confirmed yet, or?
I have.
Before, I'd like to see if there's any public comment question on this. If you could open that up, Courtney.
If any members of the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand virtually or here in the room. There's none at this time.
And if I could, just a note of appreciation for the work you're doing.
Thank you very much.
I mean, this is really critical. Thank you.
I agree. We really are facilitating what the members are bringing to the table. Like, we have a lot of very active work group members, a lot of perspectives, and everything is informing the recommendations that we make. So we've been very pleased about how the work groups come together, and the state partners particularly, we're working very closely. You know, the longer we work together, the more we think along the same lines. And so just want to acknowledge that it's a group effort, and really excited and privileged to be part of it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And just adding to that, Mr. Henning and the Treasurer's Office have been a great partner as part of this.
Yes.
So,
Not here, but we'll thank him too. Okay, with that, I think we're on to other board matters, which is just any topics that board members have that we can deal with at a subsequent meeting where we can agendize it. I know we're going to have a workshop in next month, so we'll have a chance to really get our hands on things. Any topics that individuals want to touch on, raise, we can consider later on. I don't see anything. And with that then, I'd like to see if there's any public comment on any matters within our jurisdiction. Courtney, if you could open that up to see if there's any public input.
If any members of the public would like to make a comment, please raise your hand virtually or here in the room. There's none at this time.
Great, thank you. And with that, thank you all for a very robust, thoughtful conversation. Meeting adjourned.